We are a podcast for product marketers and B2B SaaS who feel misunderstood of what they do.
From someone who truly gets what you do and
basically help you feel less like a misfit, being unignorable in your role.
All right, welcome to another episode of We're Not Marketers. We always have awesome guests, but this is definitely going to be one of my tops. I'm not going to make a rank order because I'll get beaten up on the side, but definitely one of my favorite guests we've had over the 4 seasons. But before we get into that, as usual, let's give some intros to the host. So I'm Eric Holland, the Franken manager of the group. Toss it down to Zach for an intro.
Hey, this is Zach Roberts on the mic, the sales water lad, and pass it over one more time over to our fellow co-host here, Gab.
Hey, Gab Bujo, sales deck associate, passing back the mic to Eric.
Yeah, baby. Now we all know none of us on this call are actually here to listen to us three. We come for the special guest every week. And so this week we have brought you a true journeyman of research. Spent a little time at Forrester, spent a little time at Gartner, and everyone will have their own personal opinion. But mine is that he's been running the best win-loss service in all of the land. I personally worked with him for several months over at Clue. I'd like to introduce to everyone the one and only Ryan Sorley.
Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me. I've listened to a bunch of your sessions before, your episodes, and every time you start with, this is one of my special guests. So I hope you really mean it, Eric. I really hope you do.
Thank you for calling him out.
That's not true. There are people who get that title.
We got the Pennsylvania thing in common for sure. We got the cornfields, the Amish people.
You're right.
Carnivals, the fairs, right? We get all that stuff going.
You're right. Fun fact before we actually dive in, Ryan and I basically not living in the same time period, but we grew up in the same general 20 minutes of each other. And I believe, did you go to Dickinson?
I went to Gettysburg. Yeah.
All right. The Gettysburg, went to college, 40-minute drive for me. So this B2B tech world is getting smaller and smaller the older and grayer I
It's
get.
like Field of Dreams, right? The episode Eric walks out from the core and Ryan walks out from the core.
Yeah, we go get a
good
good
B2B
9-inning thing with really musty gloves on. But all right, enough Pennsylvania talk. Gab, do you mind asking the one question that's on every single episode and on everyone's minds?
Yes, thank you. So Ryan, are product marketers actually marketers? Why or why not?
I think you guys were canceling that question because Raheem killed it during one of your last episodes with the 81% of product marketers are reporting to the CMO. But I will give you my take on it, and will agree with Raheem and his data that I believe product marketers are marketers. But I also listened to the Dave Gerhardt episode and his explanation about how it depends on the size of the organization and the tenure, how long the company has been around, if they're a newer organization where there's a product marketer who's wearing a bunch of hats, or if it's a larger, more established company. But where I sit with this is that as a win-loss jockey, we serve product marketers each and every day. We support all of their research efforts related to how they're looking at the market, what they want to understand from their buyers. So they're very focused on this outside-in perspective, trying to understand what the business drivers are. What are the key selection criteria that buyers are looking for? How do they view us? And they're collecting that data to translate internally to product, to marketing, to sales enablement, to the C-suite, to customer success, to help them understand, like, what is the messaging that I'm getting that we need to start thinking about to go inside out to the market. So I would say that they are marketers, they're researchers, they're sales enablers. I don't see them in the product side as much, and that does align with Raheem's 12% reporting up to product. But yeah, I see them as marketers. I see them serving different groups within the organization, leadership, board meetings, pitch decks, all the way through analyst relations, enablement activities with new hires, the whole 9 yards. So yes, they're marketers, but there are a lot of other things as well. They're like what is it called? Swiss Army knife of sorts in many ways. Here's my answer.
Danielle,
Looks
Danielle,
like we
we
got to
should-
close up our show again.
we should have known better of asking this question to Ryan coming from the research lens, similar to Raheem, that we were going to get shut down again.
I don't know. But that's the benefit of using skeleton branding, because we can die on a weekly basis and it doesn't matter.
That's true. That's true.
All right. We appreciate the take. And I don't think it was too surprising. But what I loved how you straight up called out research. And obviously you've spent a lot of time with that. And opinions aside, I think product marketers are expected to do a lot of research in general. And I think the good ones know that, and the ones that are struggling probably aren't doing as much research. But we had actually a conversation earlier this season about the intent around research, and how just hopping on a call with a prospect and asking how their day is going and just having a loose approach to your research didn't seem to be the right way to go about it. So I want to get your perspective on what is like a good approach to research. How intentional do you have to be with your line of questioning? And how do you do that without leading the witness? So take that wherever you want. I know that was 3 questions, but
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a lot of different ways to answer it. I'll try to boil it down to the core, my 4 beliefs in this particular area. I think that when you're doing research, you have to know why you're doing the research. And you'd be surprised how many people come to us. They want to roll out a win-loss program or a churn program. And we ask what they're looking to learn, and they have no idea. And they're looking for us to tell them what they're looking to learn, which is a red flag. Right? So I think it's important for people to, product marketers, competitive intelligence folks, spend time talking to different functional leaders within their organization to find out what's important to you. How are you being measured this year? What are your short and long-term objectives? How do they tie up to our corporate big, hairy, audacious goals or objectives? And by doing that, you're able to build a set of program learning objectives and a general idea of, okay, now I know what I want to learn because I've asked the people who are ultimately my customers of the data what they want to learn. And by doing that, you start to get into the interview. And you don't want to have loosey-goosey interviews, but you definitely want to have interviews that feel very organic in nature to the person who you're having the conversation with. You don't want to go question, answer. You want to probe. You want to go where they're going. You want to be able to pick up like an Easter egg hunt, these Easter eggs, put them in your basket and bring them home to your leadership team. So I think it's about understanding what your objectives are first. And the questions follow, right? If there's an objective around competition, and we want to understand as much as we can about how they're going to market and how they're differentiating against us and how the sales experience is, we know that objective is important. We're going to ask questions about it. We're going to ask smart, open-ended, well-timed questions in the interview and sit back and let them be the expert. Let them share all of their experience about that or with that vendor so that you're collecting those Easter eggs. So I think, it does start with talking to others, understanding what's important at that particular time, which will change, every month or quarter, and being able to build those objectives, ask smart, open-ended questions intentionally, and be able to have natural feeling, organic discussion so that you could establish credibility and trust with the person that you're interviewing. So that's my take.
That piece. I really like that piece that you're sharing here, Ryan. And I want to dive deeper on that because for a lot of fractional product marketing is on the rise. I would say almost all fractional product marketers will cite as their service win-loss research. This is the activity we deliver. But one unspoken problem that comes out of that is that it seems we're so focused on the activity that we don't really think about what can clients and stakeholders do with this information. So with that perspective, I'm curious, when you are consulting with clients, when you got to win-loss research, what is the superpower that's now unlocked that wasn't possible before without this information? I'm curious to get more context.
What is the superpower of the researcher, or what is the superpower of the customer who's receiving the data?
the customer is receiving this data. So
Yeah,
like,
got
I'm
it.
getting this win loss. I'm just curious what's changed.
The beautiful part of win-loss data starts with what most organizations have today, which is CRM data, right? And that CRM data is typically not super reliable in most organizations, all organizations. And it's unreliable because of the limited choices people have with reason code dropdowns. And it's also super unreliable because it's seller sourced. And while we love our sellers, we know that they don't always ask the right questions when they win or lose a deal. We know that the buyer's not always super honest with them about why they chose you or didn't choose you. That's where the superpower of win-loss comes in. If you actually take an impartial interviewer, whether that's a third party like Clue or it's actually product marketer within the organization who has no vested interest in that particular deal, that's where the buyer opens up and they're very thoughtful and intentional about answering your questions related to their experience. And because the seller is not on the phone, they're very open to sharing what they didn't like or did like about that particular seller. And oftentimes when you're conducting a win-loss interview or like a post-mortem as a seller, you're not getting into like all the detail about competition, all the detail about pricing, all the detail about why they didn't select you. What happens with those interviews is they turn into win-back interviews when they're supposed to be win-loss interviews, and the buyer just shuts down. So there's this superpower in doing this right and going in there authentically and creating a safe environment for people to be able to open up and share, almost like a neutral Switzerland type situation. Being able to get that real high signal data empowers you and enables you to be able to synthesize, analyze that data to identify like themes that are starting to emerge within your data set that you can then turn into actions. And one story that I love to share about this is I don't know if it was HubSpot. We had a HubSpot interview years and years ago, and say that because it was so long ago now. And in that interview, it was a loss interview. It was with a financial services company that was looking at HubSpot versus a couple of other companies. It had come down to the wire and there were two horses left in the race. And the company asked the two vendors to come on site and provide a demo. Provide a demo to the leadership team. It's the last was the thing that they needed to do. So the HubSpot team came in and they're a very cool company, very hip, very young. And they had that kind of energy when they went into the meeting. The sales manager was on their phone closing out deals because it was the end of quarter. They were also wearing like a really expensive pair of ripped jeans. And when it came down to it, the leadership team felt that the other company who came in with suits and ties mirrored them was a better cultural fit. And they pushed for that company to go with HubSpot's competitor, which they did. Now, like, how the heck would HubSpot have known that if the salesperson had reached out to find out why they didn't win that particular deal? And I'm not saying that this is the moral of the story is not to wear ripped jeans. The moral of the story is you need to mirror the person or the people that you're selling to. You need to feel like you're them in many ways to be able to get that box checked that there's a strong cultural fit there. So that's one of a million stories I have about really fun, cool things that we picked up in win-loss interviews that we feel that our clients would never have known.
Go ahead. What Devin shared in like last season of like people buy from who they know, like, and trust. I think that's like a mini example of like just a quick snap judgment of ripped jeans. Again, the moral still not being ripped jeans. Don't wear ripped jeans, but like you said, mirroring our buyers.
Yeah. I was going to say, from my perspective, imagine being the champion on that and like enjoying that sales rep and their personality. And at the end of the day, how do you tell them that, hey, your ripped jeans were the reason that we didn't go with you? And so, of course, that's not going to show up in the CRM, both because sales rep's not going to put it in there. And two, yeah, you can't have that honest conversation with someone who's done nothing wrong to you up to that point. So that's a great story, Ryan.
The funniest part of that story is recently I posted that story on LinkedIn and I got a lot of people commenting and sharing it and whatnot. And a lot of them were like, that's a bullshit story. That didn't happen. And actually, the person who managed that program, the client at the time, sent me a message on the side and he said, I remember when that happened. So it was like, do I cut and paste his message and put it into the thread so people know I was?
We kept the receipt.
Have the receipts on that one. So it was pretty funny. And I didn't do that because people can be haters all they want. There's a moral of the story, the most important point.
I love it. Ryan wins the silent way. It's one of the many things I respect about him. And I also would like to call out that one of the things I respect most about Ryan is while I was making my transition away from Clue, he very much was like, hey, how can I help you? Because I hear you're trying to niche down and maybe run your own thing and become a solopreneur. And the three of us on this call are very much looking to do that. And I think move into that world. So could you tell us a little bit about that journey and why ultimately, you told me this already, but why did you end up betting on yourself?
Yeah. So I guess first, I love to talk about my journey, especially with people who are just starting, because I feel like there were good times and bad times for sure. And I love the fact that people have the guts to go out there on their own and try to build something from scratch. And nothing makes me happier to see that because there's a lot of people who sit behind a desk and they wither away, right? And then they leave, get old, whatever it might be, and nobody remembers them. And they didn't have the opportunity to make that mark. And for me, I've always felt that the risk of failure was not nearly as great as the risk of never having tried. Like I couldn't live with myself not having gone out there and given it a shot. I just luckily through luck and people that helped support the journey was successful on a small level, what I was able to do up to this point. But I guess I have moments in my career working for Gartner and Forrester and a company called AMR Research where I didn't feel like I was making a difference. I didn't feel like I mattered as much. And I remember when I was much younger, I was driving down the road in New Jersey, which was my territory at the time when I was working for Forrester for a period of time. It was pouring rain. I was wearing a really uncomfortable suits. I hate to wear suits, by the way. And I was in this powder blue rental car. It was a Taurus at the time. And I was just like depressed. I'm like, what am I doing here? Working for the man, driving down the Jersey Turnpike in the pouring rain, wearing this uncomfortable suit. It's just bullshit. Like this is not who I am. And I always remembered that feeling. And I always told myself, I'm going to not have that feeling someday. I'm going to go out there and figure it out. And for me, like that, from that point on, I was an entrepreneurship major in college. It wasn't just like out of the blue. But from that point on, I was thinking about writing business plans and I wrote a few and then I would talk myself out of it because I would get to the end and be like, you know what? This is why this isn't going to work. It doesn't feel right to me. I don't feel like I'm the right person for this. And 10 years ago, I was having a conversation with a great friend of mine. His name's Rob Garf, and he was working for a company called Demandware, and they were later bought by Salesforce, another Salesforce Commerce Cloud. And he was talking to me about many things, but one of which was their win-loss program. They were working with a third-party company out of Utah and one of the OGs of the win-loss space. And they weren't super like happy with what they were getting. They weren't finding a lot of value. He had a lot of complaints about that particular program. So I'd be like, tell me more about that. I want to know what is win-loss? What does that mean? And he shared, it's just interviewing buyers, finding out why they chose us or chose a competitor and writing research and analyzing it and giving it back to us. And I said, why is it not working? What's the problem? He said, people don't really give a shit about it here. They don't care about the reports. It's collecting dust on the shelf. And there's no connection to our objectives, to our leadership team. There's nobody in here asking the right questions about what we care about. So I took that conversation. I went home and I'm like, wait a second. I can do that much better than that company can. I have a sales background and a sales leadership background. So I know salespeople. I've been trained on many different sales methodologies. I know how to ask questions. I've been working for research firms. I know research, and I've been supporting buyers of technology for many years. I understand buyers. And like, this is something that I don't need to write a business plan. As a sales leader, I know that I could use this. I feel strongly that this would add value. I'm just going to go off and do it. And I think it was like 2 weeks later, I called up my boss at the time and said, hey, I resigned. I need to go do this thing. And I was lucky because at the time I was at Gartner and they called them area vice president. So I had a team of about 35 salespeople and 4 sales managers, and our team was doing really well. And I think they valued my team leadership and the stuff that I was bringing to the table. They asked me to stay for 3 months, and they said, listen, if you stay, we'll give you 1 day a week to go work on this thing. And you can't tell your team. So you have to just go off and take Fridays off and go off and do it. But we need you Monday through Thursday. And I said, sure, I'm still collecting a paycheck. Management knows what I'm doing. This is great. And then the end of that 3 months came and they said, hey, could you maybe do another 3 months? I was like, okay, like I didn't hate it. And I was able to start to build out the methodology and start talking to organizations. I landed my first client, which was Demandware. And then the end of the 6th month came and they asked me to stay another 3 months. So I was into it for 9 months with 1 day a week focused on building out this new business, at which point I finally left the company in April of 2014 to go off and be full-time with DoubleCheck. That's my story. It's like from the Powder Blue Taurus in the rainstorm on the New Jersey Turnpike to leaving Gartner, great position, doing really well, to just need to do this in my heart and soul. I need to do it now. So that was it. My story.
Such a great one. Such a great story, from being depressed in the Taurus and wondering what the hell is happening to starting out. And I'm curious about that. You said that you were going with those business plans and you were always telling yourself, oh, it doesn't work. Do you feel that this time it worked because you finally figure out a problem you could solve by positioning yourself in a way to solve it?
Yeah, I would say that I think that we all know that business plans are things that are created to sell the idea to other people. And they change as soon as you start down a path, right? You start here, it looks a whole lot different 3 months, 6 months down the road. So is it a waste of time? It's a little bit of a waste of time if you're a solopreneur who's looking to bootstrap a business. You want to be agile. It's not a waste of time if you are going to raise money or looking to recruit people at that point. I believe it's if you feel so passionately about that thing, you're like, that is it. I feel it, like universe. That GIF where the guy's what I'm talking about. He's got glasses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a black turtleneck or something.
That's right. Yeah. Jobs looking, but with hair. Yeah. That's how I felt. And that's how I think we all need to feel. Like I wasn't going out to start a toothbrush company. I'm not passionate about that, but I felt like I could solve this problem better than anybody else. And I knew that I could solve it better than the leader in the space at the time that Demandware was using.
There's something I was going to add something here really quick.
No, you're good, Marie. Go ahead.
So there's some underlying current that I think we're hearing, Ryan, and counteracts this traditional point of view of working solo. Like I've spoken to a few individuals who are interested in it. They're like, I have this plan. I've got to get this website up. I've got to do this. I got to do this before I'm ready to go out the door. But what's really unique about your story, it sounds like you had a minimal viable plan where it's like, I had this criteria to say, okay, I'm good to go. Thinking back to that experience, like what would you say was like the bare minimum that you were okay with to say, I'm ready to hit the ground running on this?
So I think for me, it was like deconstructing what this other company was doing and kind of like reverse engineering what they were doing and then re-engineering it. So I had a bit of a roadmap of what other third-party win-loss providers were doing. I had an idea of what they charged. And I had a good idea of where I could add more value. So I think that minimum viable product or service in this case was not being a copycat per se, but looking at what somebody was doing and trying to build a better mousetrap. So I think that's what I needed. And then the other piece for me, which not everybody has going into these things, and in retrospect, it probably wasn't as important as I thought, but I have this certain like pedigree, that's the right word, or background that I could sell. Like I could sell that I worked for Gartner. I was a VP of sales. I've all day, every day working with buyers of technology. I spent all day, every day around researchers. I'm the guy for this job. And I feel so confident about that people felt that confidence. It wasn't this, oh, I think I can help you out. And no, I don't have a lot of experience. Like I sold hard on the experience that I've had as opposed to the experience and win-loss that I didn't have. That makes sense.
No, it does make sense. I think that's a common theme. That's my last thing I'm going to add here is that I've heard this before. It's like, almost like the 3 E's of like experience, expertise, and empathy. When I hear your story, I think about, oh, here's someone who's had experience in these organizations, who has this deep expertise with working in sales, and get empathy, like gets my world, like understands what I can and speaks my language. And I think from successful solopreneurs, I've seen that's been like a common theme I've seen across the board.
Yeah, I think on the empathy piece, one thing that we have as advantages as smaller entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, is that we have the ability to really provide much better customer service than larger, more established players. Like we will give that client so much love that they'll never forget it and they'll tell everybody versus, hey, I work for this company. I'm a customer success manager. I get paid this. I've got 30 clients. I've got metrics to hit. Like we don't have any of that stuff. We're like, we are here. We want to give you as much love as possible. We want you to tell your friends. I don't have a sales team. I double checked. I had no sales team. I was the salesperson. We grew to 30 people, 100 clients, no sales team, just because we were dishing out love every day. We were super flexible. We wanted to make sure that people saw so much value that when they went from this company to that company, we were the first person to call them. There's a woman named Jess Iandurio. She's a CMO in Boston who has worked in a number of different companies like Ria and Starburst. She wrote an article a few years ago, and in that article, it was something like Taylor Swift analogy. I'm not like a Swiftie, so I don't totally get it. But she said, this is my equivalent to the Taylor Swift squad.
Her homies. It's her
homies. Yeah. She wrote an article and she said, these are my homies. And she put me in there. I'm like, I'm her homie. I'm one of her members. And she takes me from takes us from one company to the next because we're part of her squad. So I think it's like squad life. We want to be part of people's squads. We want to make sure that they think about us like we're in their toolkit. They need us every time they go. And they move from one company to the next frequently. So that ties into just being around for long. Don't give up. If you're giving up after 2 or 3 years, you're missing that 4th year when your client has moved to the next company and is going to sign a big contract with you. So you have to like just stick with it as much as you possibly can through the good times and bad.
Whoa, wow. It's like you knew what I wanted to ask you. So let's start with the good real quick. Real simple question. How great were those Fridays for that 9 months when you had 4 days in office and 1 day working on the business?
It was super exciting to have this problem that I knew I could solve, but I had the time to be able to go out and solve it while getting a paycheck. I think I had 2 kids at the time. No, 1 kid. After I resigned, another kid came, and then a 3rd kid eventually showed up. So I had mouths to feed too. And I think it was just like great. It was weird not being able to tell my team, like my close compadres, that I was doing this thing. And when I finally did tell them, it was like, once again, the GIF emoji, but not emoji, but the GIF. But yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question. Good times, Fridays, Good Fridays. Yeah.
For sure. Thank you for the context too, for those who are building a family or have one already. That's a super good note. And then let's switch to the bad times. I think we heard a lot of great success on that journey, but I know you reached some darker times. So what were some of those like, and how could you help us navigate them ourselves?
Yeah, I think I had an advantage during darker times because I was a bootstrap business. I didn't have investors over my shoulder asking what was going on with the business. I only had me to report to. And I also, like, early on, and for quite a long time, had contractors. I didn't have employees. So by having contractors, business started to wane for some reason. I could get rid of a contractor. If I hired a contractor, like an editor, and they just didn't work out, I could get rid of them without any sort of like a severance package or any sort of recourse. So I leaned heavily into that world because I had the flexibility to add people or to remove people based on how the business was ebbing and flowing. There are rules associated with doing that. There's a lot of specific things that you have to follow to have people qualify as contractors. And I learned that lesson the hard way too. I had to pay a tax for a number of years back for those folks who were misclassified. So look out for that. Don't make that mistake. But yeah, like the dark times were typically when there was a tech recession or pandemic. I don't know if you recall, there was a pandemic a few years ago. That kind of stuff definitely affected our ability to bring on new clients, deliver. And as we grew, as we added more and more people, cash flow was an issue from time to time. And cash flow was really related to how regular clients were paying their bills, right? And if you're expecting that $100,000 check to cover payroll and it didn't come in, you had to start to do a little bit of a dance. And there were times when I had to tell the team, like, hey, we're going to have to push off that payroll for another week or sometimes even 2 weeks. So with that particular example, another important thing I leaned into was hiring people who were not necessarily the breadwinners of their family. Like they were really smart. Maybe it was somebody who had a great job as a Forrester analyst and then decided to have kids, and they were looking for something 10 to 20 hours a week. Their spouse worked in finance. So this was just fun for them. The money didn't matter quite as much. So I made very specific decisions to find people like that weren't depending on me to pay their rent. And that worked for quite a while until we got bigger and cash flow was less of a problem. But the early days, I definitely looked for those smart part-timers.
I had one, but maybe we'll move it, but it's basically back to what you said on like the business plan. I feel if you want to get acquired up to a point, it's important, but with the solopreneur route, what I think is useful is to have a mind map instead. So you don't necessarily have a business plan, but at the center, there's your business activities, the reason, the problem you're solving, and then you have different nodes. And those nodes can be ideas you have on the go, but at the end, you're looking at the whole mind map, and it's easier than having an overall business plan.
So the mind map would have the core of what you're doing and then the use cases ultimately, like where you can deliver value in different places. Is that what you're getting at?
Use cases, ideas, offer. Every time you're thinking about your business, because it's your whole thing, you're just adding different branches. And then what you can see is, does it relate to my core activities? Because I feel, and you can probably talk to us a bit about that, a big struggle when you're running your own thing is prioritization. And you get ideas and you think about that. And it's always, does this feed my bigger purpose, right? Does this feed my positioning? The reason why I decided to go all in into that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll give you a very biased answer on it. It's just the way that I'm wired and the way that I think about things is very simple. I like simple things. I'm a minimalist. And I don't like to overcomplicate things. So for me, there's a million consultants out there who say they do everything, right? Oh, I can help you with battle cards. I can help you with win-loss interviews. I can help you with personas. I can do anything for you. And every time they have a new need that comes up, they'll take it and then they'll add that as a product. That for me means maybe they're great at all of that. Maybe they're the top consultant in that space, but more so they're probably diluting their value proposition by not niching down into something that they're really well known for. Like it's hard to be a product marketing consultant that is just a product marketing consultant. They're known to be a product marketing consultant. It's much easier to be the best at front page website branding, right? We know somebody who does that. Best at demos. We know somebody who does that as well, right? You want to be that guy. Or person. You want to be the person everybody thinks about. I'm really speaking to how I feel like I'm the me in this case. Like I want to be the best person at that one thing, hands down, nobody can touch me. And if you do that, you start to build your brand and reputation and you start to be known as the best in that particular area. And then win-loss, been relatively easy. There's a lot of people, to your point earlier, that say they do win-loss, but there's not as many who are like dedicated win-loss providers. And the market has consolidated. And there's not a lot of voices out there talking about win-loss consistently. So, in retrospect, I was lucky to pick this particular path, but that's led to me having a pretty loud voice in the win-loss space. So I think for me, it's specialize, be the best at that thing, create a repeatable, scalable process, teach others to do it, grow. That's the business right there. No mind.
Don't be a Walmart. Be a specialized store.
No mind map. And I just love the point of the confidence. Once you feel it strong enough, that's when you're ready to jump out the plane, whether you got your parachute or not.
Hopefully,
I've loved this. And a little birdie told me that you're ready for your next big venture, and that's become a published author. I heard you got a book called Blind Spots coming out in April. So love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So Blind Spots is 250 pages of win-loss porn. And it is, I got permission to say that from the group before the call, but it's intended to be more of like a modern take on win-loss. There hasn't been a win-loss book written in many years. And this is intended to help somebody who's starting from scratch. Like they were told that they need to roll out a win-loss program. They have no idea where to start. And it's really like a map for them to be able to start with understanding those objectives and talking to leadership all the way through how to conduct interviews, how to build an interview guide, how to create deliverables. And it's has a lot of great stories in there, in my humble opinion as well. So it's not like a textbook. It's more of an easy read. If you're into win-loss, it's also something you can use to put your kids to sleep at night if you like as well, because they will certainly fall asleep if you read it out loud to them. So that's Blind Spots coming out April 1st.
And it's not
an
April Fool's joke. It's not April Fool's joke.
It's not.
It's just some light bedtime reading for the kids. I love it. I will definitely be grabbing a copy, if not two. Ryan, it's been awesome having you on today. I think both from talking about research and then moving into how do you jump out of that plane and start something that you feel passionate about. I'm leaving here excited. So anyone listening, go find Ryan on LinkedIn for sure, because not only does he have some good stuff that he posts, but he also drops some gold into your own posts, which just make me smile. I've actually had to check with Clue's social team to see if they had a hold of his comments. And in fact, he's doing them all himself. And two, go grab his book on April 1st. Make sure you get that. Whether you're doing win-loss now or you need to actually get it started, I think it's going to be super awesome. And just knowing how much time and effort's gone into that book, it's definitely going to be one of the best sellers in B2B PMM world.
No, I think that's it. Unless I'm supposed to plug something and I've forgotten, Eric, I can't recall. But I think we covered everything. Yeah, I'm pumped to be here with you guys. Thanks for the opportunity, the invite, and yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Thank you for being here. Great stories, great interview.
Yes.
Our cups are filled.
And that's another episode of We're Not Marketers. Catch you next time.
See you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to We're Not Marketers. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, review our podcast, and share this episode with other PMMs. Thanks again, and see you soon.